This episode of Super Pulp Science is brought to you by Electric Monk Media and the short film Don't Waste a Precious Minute, directed by Mark Green, now available on Steam.
Attention, citizens! It's time for Super Pulp Science!
Okay, so this is Super Pulp Science, where we talk about how genre gets made, and we have a very robust cast for you today. To my immediate right, Matt from At Bay Press is going to talk to us about running a press. Next to him is Michael Saunders, who is with Electric Monk Media, and he is going to talk to you about making movies and telling stories with moving pictures. And then, whether you like it or not, our long-suffering co-host, Justin Curry, has just arrived.
I don't want to be here either, Greg.
So the gentlemen have arrived without any prior knowledge or planning. In fact, each of my guests believe they were the only guests today.
Yeah, it's a bit of an ambush.
Yeah, it's a bit of an ambush. But here's the thing, gentlemen.
I feel bad for Matt because he came obviously prepared with a nice stack of books.
Well, we have a whole hour to talk about that. But let's first I'll introduce why it is I have both of you here together. It's that both of you I view as being disruptors in your field. Both of you have taken the pre-existing models of, in your case, Mike, filmmaking, in your case, Matt, bookmaking, and said, the done way isn't necessarily for us. We're going to reinvent some of those wheels and do it our own way, and have had success regardless.
Right.
And we all know Justin doesn't care about any rules, so I thought the three of you, and maybe I, could have a pretty good conversation about that.
Sounds good.
But before that, let's talk about our shared loves. You brought something. You brought a pile of stuff. I know this is basically radio, but I can't even. So I'm looking right now. Matt brought us a copy. What grade is this? This has got to be like.
Yeah, it's nice high grade. It's
like
Startling Comics.
Maybe a 7 already of Startling Comics number 51. He's got a Startling Comics here. Oh, wow, this is, if you lose this, 50. He's got a Weird Science Fantasy, number 27. Tell me about this, what you brought for us.
Well, I mean, it was just based on previous episodes that I'd listened to of your show, and of course the title of the show. So I just thought it'd be fun to actually bring in some weird science, some pulp, some stuff that's, I mean, you guys have been talking about that you guys mentioned on the show. I know you guys have mentioned Lovecraft before. And
tell us about this November issue, 1937, of The Shadow that you brought.
Okay, well, it's. I mean, The Shadow, I think, is kind of the penultimate, like, kind of, pulp character. I mean, The Shadow has appeared on radio. Been voiced by Orson Welles, among others. Obviously the magazine, the comics, the movies. I mean, it's so pulpy and yet continues to survive even now in our sort of like modern age. But this particular pulp was, I think it was 1940.
I think it says on the cover here, 1937. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. So yeah, I mean, it's. At this period in time, a lot of the stuff being published, both in book format, we'll call them, pocket books and that kind of thing. There was an obsession with the mystical Orient, and of course, the Shadow is embroiled in this mystery in this book.
Basically turned cultural appropriation into a superpower here.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
I'm looking at the cover, the mystery of the East and the action of the West in one complete.
I mean, obviously, these things can't be sold now without being faced with, and rightly so, some definite questions about that. You bring up the appropriation and that kind of thing. But
the Shadow is definitely one of those first ones that spanned like all media.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? You couldn't
everything.
Turn on the radio without seeing the Shadow. You couldn't go to the newsstand without seeing the Shadow.
Huge character,
right?
Yeah.
So that brings us around to you, Mr. Sanders.
In that I'm a shadow.
In that you're a shadow, and you're a shadowy figure. So you take stories from all kinds of places. Why don't you tell our dear listeners a little about what kind of stuff you do?
I don't know. I think that's a terrible question.
That's a terrible question. What would be a better question?
That's the first one.
The thing I've come to know about Mike.
The reason I think is that I'm the worst person at describing what the hell it is that I do. So
We were talking about this when you arrived, the way that on the outside of a rocket, you can see its trajectory and you can see it like rise towards the stratosphere, and you're like, look, it's going to make it. Yeah. But inside the rocket, you're just
suffering
rattling
G-forces
and
and drifting in and out of consciousness.
That's right.
Yeah.
So that's what you're inside the
In and out
rocket.
of consciousness.
I feel like I'm drifting in and out of consciousness on a daily basis. Yep. Yeah.
All right. So you got your start. Well, when I first met you, you were acting, you were shooting.
Yeah,
you
I
were
had a very short-lived
photographer,
acting career. Yeah.
Yeah, you were doing all kinds of stuff. Now you're a producer. You shoot documentary films.
Yeah.
You write and create your own content for
Yeah,
film.
I shoot, I edit. I mean, mostly in the last, I'd say 2-3 years, I've spent most of my creative time editing. Not and a little bit of shooting, but I started as a photographer.
Okay,
way
so
back when.
one thing that I find particularly interesting about the creative fields is they have the same word and it means a lot of different things in a lot of different ways. So in your case, when you say editing for film, describe what that process really is.
Well, editing for film is putting together sequences of images, or to borrow from someone much smarter than me who I can't remember who said it, it's the sequencing of uninflicted images to create a cohesive meaning.
Okay.
Wasn't it Orson Welles too? I bring him up again. I don't know why, but wasn't it him that said that a movie doesn't really take shape until it gets into the editing room?
Oh yeah, yeah. And when it does hit the editing room and start to take shape, it constantly shifts its form.
And again, for the listener, an editor has not necessarily been involved in any of the shooting process.
For the most part, yeah. But I mean, I've never edited on a project that I wasn't involved.
Right.
As either the cinematographer, primarily. I mean, the last 2 documentaries that I edited, I didn't do all of the shooting, so there was an element where I was working with someone else's material and bringing it in and that kind of thing. But in the film world, being an editor makes you a better cinematographer, makes you a better director. It makes you better at everything, because the editor is the one that gets all the stuff when you're on set. If you're not exposed to the editing, you think that everything you're getting is the worst or everything you're getting is gold. It's very rare that you're in the middle, right? And if you feel like everything is gold, that's probably a bad sign. You should probably be on the other of thinking everything you're getting is I don't think we're getting it, but it feels like we might be, so let's just keep going.
Okay. And now for book world.
Right.
Tell us the job of the editor.
Well, I mean, it's in many ways it's similar. I mean, we're probably just going back to what Mike was saying. It's interesting because I was thinking about Mike's scenario, which is I'm assuming he's working in a bit of a smaller op rather than say like a large Hollywood studio. And
yeah, God no.
Right.
No, yeah.
And so the reason that you were saying, I think the reason that you were saying, that you actually do get to see a lot of the production and a lot of the filmmaking and the cinematography is because you're a smaller op. You're more involved.
Absolutely.
There's more hands on deck.
Yeah.
And it's the same for us. I mean, we're not a massive conglomerated publisher. We've always kind of felt like we were a family, sort of operation, which is kind of true. And because of that, writers write. They write their manuscript. Artists do their illustrations, and then that stuff gets submitted to us, or we discover it through festivals or conventions, that sort of thing. But the work is either done or being pitched to us, and then after that is completed, after we have a full-length manuscript ready to go, that's when the editor is involved. So the editor doesn't actually see the work until there is work.
Right.
There's very few times. I'm not a big fan of pitches unless I really know the artist or the author quite well. I'm familiar with their work. Right. I like to be able to see, because I always feel like everybody has a great idea for a book. There's tons of people. Everybody could write a book. I mean, they've lived a life, right? So they could write a book. But until they actually do the work, I don't care.
The shadow knows.
I have a question for the three of you. You can just answer numerically. In the past year or two, how many times have you heard the phrase, I have a great idea for a book, movie, graphic novel?
Tons.
Oh, yeah.
All the time.
Mostly from the inside of my own head.
Well, yeah. And like
And it's
lots
the same.
of people.
Sorry, Matt. It's the same
Yeah, go for it.
response. You feel like you're pitching yourself, and you're
Yeah.
like, "Well, that sounds like a great idea," but when you actually do it, I'll pay attention.
Yeah. That's usually my response too. Is like, what have you done so far?
Yeah.
And when the answer is nothing, there's like, well, I don't believe you're going to do this one either.
Yeah. There's that, and then also too, a lot of great ideas are great ideas until they actually get down on paper, and then you realize, oh man, I wasn't able to flesh this out properly.
They realize it's a lot of work.
That too, but it's like well, an idea is just an idea until you actually have like these are people who haven't even they haven't even created a synopsis for us to look at, right?
An idea sounds good, but eventually at the end of the day, you have an iPod and a Zune sitting on the table side by side each other.
Yeah.
Right? They're the same idea, basically.
I think also like we're our translator from our brains like idea cloud to the paper. We've gotten good at that translation, so we know what that idea is going to look like on page.
Right.
When you're starting out, that translator sucks.
Right.
So what seems like a great idea, once it gets here, it's a bit of a mess. And that's what I think practice in making things does. It gets that translation from what's up here to what's down here
And what's
better.
interesting for you as
The key is finishing.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah,
but
the
for you
key
as a
is
film
finishing.
editor, the step is different. So you go from idea, right, to shooting, collect everything, right, to the edit. Whereas in your case, for the book, you'd rather have the book finished and then edit it. There's I think, a slightly different.
Well, there
step
is,
in there.
at least for us. I mean, if we don't actually have something to work on, then we're not going to we're not going to invest our people into a project that is right now just an idea. I don't care how good it is. It's this part of it too is I want to be able to see that you are invested, that you are going to go the distance and get the work done. And that's only half the battle. And don't get me wrong, we will publish books by people who are authors who are very introverted, who don't want to do shows, who don't want, their work is very good. We're not going to not put a book out, but I always feel that if you want your book to be successful, you really have to be able to get behind it.
Right.
So that's the writing the manuscript or doing the illustrations is part one. Part two now is getting behind the book and getting it into readers' hands. That's partly our job as well. We have to market it properly. We have to distribute it properly. We have to have our sales force go into bookstores and make sure it gets on shelves. But the author, the artist, they are the number one reason that people are going to pick up the book.
Is that not true, like, across the board? Like, from a smaller publisher up to, like, somebody like Barnes & Noble, if the author isn't on board with pushing it, don't you still need that when you're working with a huge publisher? Like, you need that person
That's a good question for both.
on the ground, going to all these
Sure.
events and showings and signings and
Sure.
regardless of the scale.
Yeah, I mean, there's a handful of anomalies. You take like Thomas Pynchon. I mean, this is a person who refuses to appear in public. He hasn't had a photograph taken from him since his high school days. Wow. You know what I mean? Like, but his books sell really well. But that's a very rare case. And then you go on the flip side to somebody like Stephen King, who has appeared everywhere, who's so prolific. I mean, there are cases where it can still work, but for the most part, you do have to get behind your book as the artist or the author. You do have to appear at bookstores. You have to appear.
No,
on
I
things like
wonder.
this.
Here's a question for you, Mike. I see the way that people promote books, the author illustrator team. It's usually one, maybe three people, maybe 4 or 5 at the outside might have to get behind it and sort of speak for the work. right? The publisher has arranged distribution, but the work itself you can sort of pin on 3 or 4 people. Do you think there's a danger in a director being the person who you pin all your hopes and dreams on, knowing that there are literally hundreds of people involved in the making of the film? Like, is that a counterintuitive? We've come to expect it from authors and from media producers, but is it bad when, one person is now speaking for, an entire team of hundreds?
Well, I think it's more efficient.
Yeah.
I think it's just a function of what you like. You know what I mean? Like what are you talking about in terms of?
Well, this cult of celebrity that has grown up around, and Justin and I kind of trade on it a little bit at shows. You try to make a name for yourself, and then you trade on that
isn't
name.
that? I mean, I think that to a certain extent, the cult of celebrity is a function of just human laziness. We don't want to have to invest a lot of time in making decisions, so we look for shortcuts to indicate what would be a good way to go. And so if you've come to trust somebody and you've come to trust their work, like I will watch, for example, I watched Phantom Thread last week, right? I love Paul Thomas Anderson. I'm not the hugest, I'm not a sycophant of Daniel Day-Lewis, but I love Paul Thomas Anderson.
Right.
And, you read the synopsis for that film and it's about a dressmaker in like the 30s, and it's described as a psychosexual drama. Only the last half of that do I find interesting. Right. And even then, I'm not even sure what a psychosexual drama is. And so there's a lot of questions already when I'm about to invest 2 hours of my life into this thing. But I also believe that it's more important than ever nowadays to be an active audience member. And I believe that watching films is that's an activity. And if you're just sitting there letting it wash over you, you're being lazy. You're not actually engaged in the piece. It should be an equivalent act to reading a book. There are, you should be reading the images, you should be following along. Anyways, I invested in that film because of Paul Thomas Anderson, and I was rewarded at the end because I loved it. But it was, going in. But, coming back to what you said, I think it's fine to let one person represent the work of many if they're representing it somewhat truthfully and consistently. But I think that once those people sort of mess up, it definitely comes back to bite them.
As an aside, and as the host of Super Pulp Science, I feel like the Phantom Thread would be a great pulp character.
It's all
the Phantom Thread, right? Like,
and
would
I'll
it be
be honest, it's got a little bit of the, pulp stories have this air of mystery and absurdity and weirdness that underline the whole, and that's what that film has, a thread of weirdness and unease and tension that runs through it that you don't expect reading the synopsis of the film.
Well, let's do what modern comics have done a lot: throw away everything but the name and the Phantom Thread. What is the Phantom Thread?
It's a haunted dress.
It's a haunted dress.
It's the haunted dress.
Ooh, I like that. It's a haunted dress, and then if it's a pulp, is it a murder mystery or is it horror? Is it a radio drama or is it a pulp story? We're reimagining the entire universe
it could be
here.
all those things.
Yeah,
it could be a dress that somewhat disintegrates over time and then gets resewn into other.
It could be like the picture of Dorian Gray, but like a dress.
Yeah, it's always coming back.
Right, the terrible things that you do when you wear it. Right, only show on the dress, but never on you.
Pictures moldering in the attic.
Yeah. It's a great idea, but I mean, until you do it.
Until you do it. Yeah.
Do it! Do it! Come on, kill me! I'm here! Come on, do it now!
The three of you broke all the rules, right? You said no.
I disagree.
You disagree?
I don't believe. I don't. I don't think that there's.
I think that statement leans on that there are rules.
There are rules. I think that there's any number of ways to do things. Like, there's not one path to get there, but there's a few proven ways to get there.
Let me rephrase that, and Dan can decide whether we edit it to seem like I was in control of the podcast the whole time. Right? The three of you have taken the path less traveled.
Okay. Well, I like, for us in publishing, there are definitely rules. Unfortunately, that we for instance, if we want a government grant, we have to follow very strict rules, and we break those all the time.
Right.
because, I mean, again, we didn't get into it thinking we were going to get that money, and we don't rely on that money. So for us, if a book is great and it doesn't meet certain guidelines that the government stipulates in order to get a government grant, we don't care. We're going to deviate from that because we want to put the best possible book out. We're not going to water it down so that we can get $1,500 or $2,000 towards printing. We'll find the money and we'll put the book out. That's us. And often our books don't meet government standards, and to hell with them.
So for people listening who are not Canadian citizens, wondering what are we talking about with this granting system, or the Canadian government provides support to publishers across this great nation in order to see that authors are more widely distributed and widely read. But there are lots of loopholes that you have to jump through to have access to that money.
Sure.
And if you want to be a bit of a disruptor and go a little against the status quo, then you're not going to receive that funding. For good or
Do we have any idea what that committee looks like of people who are deciding, here's what we want the money to go? Like, do they just see a gap in our publishing
I like to
sector
imagine
and
them all as all the villains from the Dick Tracy
Yeah,
novels,
yeah.
like sitting around.
Flap top. I mean, I can tell you who they are. They are industry peers that are selected, by, if we're talking Canada Council, they're selected by the Canada Council for the Arts, and they sit down and they assess your submission package and determine whether or not and just because you got a grant in the past doesn't mean you'll get one again. So each year is
Are
is
these
a struggle.
volunteer positions or paid positions? Canada Council, do you know?
I actually think that, you know what? I don't want to say because I don't know for sure. I'm assuming they're volunteer.
Yeah, my assumption is that.
My
But-
follow-up was, do you have any interest of being part of this council? Like, have you ever looked into
Yeah, taste
help?
right.
Yeah,
Aren't
joining
they
and helping.
juries? Like, aren't they just like? Don't they just assemble a different jury for every?
It's a different
Yeah.
group of
Okay.
individuals every year.
Okay, so depending on the year, who's looking at your book changes.
Well, yes, and so the really big problem for us is that being from Manitoba, a Manitoba publisher, there hasn't been a Manitoban on the jury in, 2 decades.
Wow.
Right, and so also Manitoba receives the least amount of awarded grants. So it's really it's really tough. I'm not saying that the Canada Council is biased. I'm just saying that that's how it's been set up for quite some time. Most of the money
People
goes
have
to
a tendency to pass the ball to people on their team, though, right?
that, and most of the money goes to Ontario and Quebec. I
you
mean, there's
don't-
more publishers.
There's more publishers. There's more submissions. Like just from a factor of odds, you
Yeah.
think that the odds are you're going to
That's where
see
it's
more
going.
money going to those places.
Yep, for sure. So, yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, yeah.
So what paths have you avoided in your...
What paths have?
Yeah.
Well,
I'm particularly interested in this decision that Electric Monk made to combine video game production and film production under the same roof.
Was there a model or a company that you guys were trying to emulate at any one point, or have you always just kind of been doing your thing and hoping it turns out?
I personally have always just been doing my thing,
Yeah.
hoping that it turns out. Yeah. Well, I noticed I'd say about 5-6 years ago now, I was in the middle of finishing a film called Men with Beards, and I was working with my friend Dylan Fries on that, and he was working for a video game company in Newfoundland. And so we were just talking about a lot of things, and at that time, it just seemed like the future was heading towards, as video cards are getting better and as the technology is getting better and the game engines are getting better, there's a lot more you can do in those game engines. And that, to me, seemed like it was going to have the same effect that the same sort of technological advances have had in the film industry. that if you want to make something, you can make it. You don't need a 60-person crew and and I'm sure a lot of people are going to disagree. You don't need to shoot everything on a red Epic, and you don't need to, you don't need an IMAX camera to make a movie.
Yeah.
You don't need a team of 400 people to make a video game. And at that time, that was already a truism. Indie games were raging, and they were, and they still are in its own mark. It's crazy, huge, successful genre.
It's
of,
usually 2 to
video
4
games.
people crews.
Yeah, they're small teams, but what they're capitalizing on is the power of these game engines that at one point you had to pay a lot of money to license, and then suddenly Unity comes out and just gives the whole kit and caboodle away for free, basically.
Yeah.
But what I noticed was that there was starting to be the things that were being done in real time in the game engines were things that at one point you were rendering out and having to do over hours or days or whatnot. And I just figured as that was getting better, the collision of what that technology, what am I trying to say?
So in developing countries, there's this interesting thing that's happened since the development of cell phones, right? So if you go to Paris, for example, not a developing nation, there is this thing that goes on where there's all this infrastructure that was built up that represents the history and development of telephone technology.
Yeah.
But in a developing nation, they don't have any of that infrastructure. They don't have any of that backlog. They don't have to rebuild anything. They don't have to tear down anything. They just jumped from one system past 20 or 30 years to the new current system, right? And I see that in what you guys are doing is that you looked at the status of both industries and you said, okay, we're going to leverage existing technology today to skip over needing, a 60-person film team or an entire.
Yeah, I think that you still, I wouldn't shy away from a 60-person crew. Don't get me wrong; it would be lovely to have that sort of resource for a film,
but not necessary.
But
if you
it's
just
not
wanna make
necessary.
things.
Yeah, and I just find that my sort of trajectory so far, I tend to shy away from working on projects where I have to give up a certain degree of control.
I'm with Mike on that one.
Yeah, I just feel like it's not necessary.
So is it the bigger part
But
of you
I
that
think
doesn't
that-
want to give up control, or the smaller part of you?
Both.
I just for me it's not an ego thing at all, really. At least I hope that's the case.
Well, it is your ego. Don't but embrace it. I mean, I think it's there for a reason.
Well, I just find that I just find for us, we work better with people that we trust. Smaller group. Going back to what Mike said. I think I would get afraid if we had 100 people at our disposal. Based on our mandate, based on what we publish, based on how we work. So, I don't know if I would be happy to have that going on. I think that right now we have a really tight-knit group of people that we work with. We trust them. We know their work. We know how they work. We can count on them to meet deadlines. And that sort of thing. And in the publishing industry, deadlines are everything. So if we don't meet those, the repercussions are substantial. So we have to have that in place.
Have you paid your dues, Jack? Yes, sir. The check is in the mail.
What makes a good story? We're sitting around this table with all this great stuff that got us all really excited. These weird fantasy volumes you brought, these first editions of H.P. Lovecraft's story collections. Dear listeners, you've never seen a more perfect copy of an Arkham House Publishing edition. The Mask of Cthulhu.
Keep your eye on that. It might go missing before you take off today.
You only brought the one. Right? Is that it? Also dreams. But what makes something good, and how do you know that you've got it?
Well, I think it's like anything. I think it's like if you're in the music industry, having a good A&R person working for you who one knows good music, knows if there's a market for it. I mean, we've turned down books that aren't for us that are good books. We've said to the author, unfortunately, it's just not something we feel we can properly bring to the trade. And that's I think a very good thing, because the last thing we want to do is take on a project that is going to be somewhat of a detriment to the author, meaning that it's not our cup of tea. We're not good at it. But when it comes to fiction, we're very good at it, and we know what we're doing. So
now you're talking as a publisher. I want you to talk as an individual.
As an individual?
Because you, for example, at Denver, you brought this incredible limited run copy of Alters and Jesters by Robert E. Howard. There's only 200. What does it say? 260 copies in the world of this thing?
Yeah.
But what you talked about was not Robert E. Howard. You immediately named the editor.
Okay. Okay. So, I mean.
So if you admire this editor, you must think that there is a way to know quality.
Yes, there is a way to know quality. I mean, when it comes to a story, at least in books, if I can't get into the book in the first few pages, I don't know why I'm reading it. I mean, there has to be an intensity, a form of pace, an understanding of the written word and how it lies on the page in order for me to want to keep reading. I'm okay with pace differential somewhere in the middle of the book, where you slow things down, you concentrate on characters or setting something, but ultimately it's just got to read well. It's just, I mean, for you, Greg, in the graphic world, it's different. I think, because you have to take that visual component. You have to take that, and you have to work with that. So
in graphic novels, you have this great trick, because people pick up a book and they flip through it, and they know immediately whether they like it. Mm-hmm. Because they have a visceral, immediate response to the art.
Okay.
Or they know it right away if they don't like it. And no amount of very rarely, I should say, in the comic book world, will the words sway a person beyond art they don't like. You just won't put up with it.
But do you trust them?
Do I trust those people?
Yeah. I mean, where I'm going with this is that there is a big difference between, I'm going to use Will Eisner or Mark Schultz, as artists and writers. There's a big difference between their work and a lot of what the comic book industry is churning out, which is mostly trash.
Right.
And the reason is that somebody like Will Eisner, you take him for example. He used to say that if you want to create mood, you're going to need a couple bottles of ink. Right? And that's because it's going to be thick, it's going to be rich, there's going to be a lot of lights and dark contrast. And I believe that. He's one of the first people who ever, and Mike can maybe speak to this to some degree, understanding film perspective in the sequential art medium.
Well, Will Eisner in particular, he, broke up panel layouts, he broke up... He was a disruptor in his own medium.
Absolutely.
We don't need these panels. I'll just draw the building to be the panels.
Yeah.
Right? Or we don't need to have a title page. I'm going to draw the building as the title for the spirit with the character walking in front. He busted up a lot of rules. So he's I like that you like him, but he's not indicative of his peers at the time.
No, of course not. His peers at the time were doing a lot of trash too. Comic books were based on the cover. You had Alex Schomburg do this unbelievable, detailed, intricate cover, and then you flip to the first page, and it's rudimentary illustrations that are by staffers that were being paid minimum wage to, who didn't even get credit for their work, going back to Will Eisner, you take something like where he would thin out his panels. to create quicker pace. I mean, just having that understanding changes the whole entire medium, so that you are, transcending the actual page itself, right? So,
Do you think? Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say I think that what you're talking about is exactly. I'm going to answer both questions. Justin's question, why we did what we did, and your question.
Like a good editor, you'll just splice them together.
Well, because I realized that what Dan's going to have an issue with is that I actually never answered your question, and so there's a big rambling bit with no ending. And if I was facing with that in the edit suite, I'd be like, we got to cut that whole thing because that poor bastard didn't finish his thought. I think
part of the fun, though, Mike.
That's part of the fun. Yeah.
He has a black mark beside your name here. So
I think that all of these. I think there's something. I think all of these artistic disciplines share a fundamental language, and I think that they all borrow from one another. I think that what you're talking about in panel design and panel layouts in a graphic novel is equivalent to the theory of montage in film editing, and.
For our dear listeners, why don't you expand that?
Oh, I don't know if I'm that articulate to expand on that. Well, what we said earlier, I mean, an editor creates sequences of uninflicted images that together create a cohesive meaning or emotion or whatnot, but taken individually don't carry that same weight. So in a graphic novel panel, you take a single one of those panels, doesn't have the same weight or emotion or message as 4 panels strung together.
So when I was first starting out in comics, someone asked me, I was like, what do I need to know about like writing stories and building up, worlds with words and pictures together? Like, give me some pointers. And they said, listen, here's a great trick that you could do. I wish I could remember who said it. It was at a show somewhere. It was someone who was just doing indie books, and they were just like, they were kind of where I thought I wanted to start. And they said, do you have a computer at home? You have Photoshop now. You can skip a bunch of steps that other people don't have. Do you have a sketchbook? Yes, I have a sketchbook. Do you have 9 drawings at least in your sketchbook? I was like, yeah. They're like, then make a 9-panel grid in Photoshop and put those images. And I was like, well, they're not related to each other. He said, they will be as soon as they're in context with one another on that page.
Yeah.
And then you look at that page and ask yourself, what is the story?
Yeah.
And I guess that's what
everything's
you do as an
connected.
editor. Yeah.
Yeah. So the name of our company is taken from a Douglas Adams book called Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency. And the books have nothing to do with that bullshit series on Netflix. Right. But, and in the book, it's a detective that solves crimes by putting together clues that seemingly aren't connected at all, but in the grand scheme of things, it's like this weaving path of connectivity. And I was given that book when I was 10 years old by my grandmother, and it probably formed my entire worldview. And just this idea that everything is connected. And like you said, like in film, a lot of times when you're putting together this stuff, you're not even sure what it's about until you start seeing things beside one another and shots, even like the short that you and I did 2 summers ago.
Yeah.
Don't Waste a Precious Minute. There are whole sequences in that film that weren't in the script,
right? That
weren't anywhere, but were put together from a series of shots that were never related in any way whatsoever, but ended up forming the connective tissue of the scenes.
Because it was sort of like what you were saying. You just have to start.
And
then you have to finish. Yeah. And then you organize what you have left over.
Yeah. Yeah. And in a lot of times, and I'm sure this is you have to start, you have to finish, and then you have to take a second,
right,
or a day, or a month, and you have to then look back at what you've made with fresh eyes, and suddenly the thing that you were in love with before is you want to get rid of it as fast as you can.
Sure.
Don'ts, half-wits, bunglers, brainless idiots. You couldn't even beat a motley group of gnomes. Get out of my sight.
So have either of you ever finished a project yourselves that you knew was no good?
Oh, I have a whole dead letter office, man. Just folders of junk. There are fragments in there that I like, and so I keep everything because I like to go back to it for 2 reasons. One, you never know. The idea could be sound, and I just have to rework it. Or two, it shows progression.
There's also a sort of a third, I think, option there is that most
Sure.
of us book people are hoarders,
Yeah.
right? Deep down, I have like all these plastic bins in our basement of all these crazy ideas I've had since I was like 14 that I kept for. There's no way I'm going to go look at them again.
Yeah.
There's no way. It's just a fire hazard in my
Yeah.
basement. Right? And every time I hold them, I'm like, one day I'm going to look through here and the perfect idea for a book that I'm able to make now will be in there.
You should just cut it all up and put it together, man.
Yeah, maybe I will.
Yeah.
You know, I tried to purge all of my my high school work at one point, and a friend was friend advised against it. He was like, don't throw that stuff away. Like, it shows that progression of anything from the quality of your work to style to what was influencing you as a younger person, and I think there's some merit, there's some foundation that's good to keep around. I mean, I have projects from from design class from college, or animation shorts from animation class in college, and I look back on this stuff and most of it's crap. Like there's a reason why I was doing what I was doing at the time. I mean, because it was due. But it shows where it shows the progression of your work, the quality of your work, right? So
Okay, so you said because it was due. We've all brought up deadlines, I think, on this show so far. What is your relationship with the deadline?
Mike?
Especially because of your expression, Mike. I think you should go first.
Well, I'm facing a deadline right now. We're not gonna hit it. We're gonna push it because
That happens.
we're not going. We're working on a documentary right now, and I'm giving the opportunity to my assistant editor to do more of the editing, and he's just starting out and diving in, and is he we're gonna have we were supposed to have a rough cut sort of this week. Are we gonna have probably not? We'll probably have a rough episode this week, and then we'll probably go into the end of May before we're done. But we're gonna be about, at the most, I think we'll be a month late. But
How do you know when giving more time will make it better or just make it later?
it's just a gut reaction.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious. What are the repercussions for you by pushing a?
That's right, dear
Okay.
listeners, because if you miss
Well,
your
if-
distributor deadline as a book guy, it's bad
Yeah,
news.
so this project is not necessarily it. Like, yes, we've said that we can deliver by that time, but if we give, we'll give an update probably in a week or so when we deliver some roughs, and they'll likely be fine with it. It's not. I'm also know we can do that because of our relationship with the broadcaster. So, and they don't need it at that particular time. The repercussion it has for us is that budgets, usually when you're working with a broadcaster, are based on hitting milestones so that you can get your next drawdown of cash.
Right.
So we will delay that drawdown of cash.
Yeah, that's a big one.
But we're talking about such a relatively small amount of money that it won't really affect us. And since we're basically financing the project ourselves, the situation for us really hasn't changed. Because we're able to sort of finance the project ourselves, we can make this decision. If we weren't in this position to be able to do that, I would be pulling very late nights over the next few weeks. Yeah.
Right. So I have a clarifying question for the both of you, and also for our listeners. What is, when a book is finished,
Right.
And due to the distributor,
Right.
what is usually the space of time between the finished project being on your desk and being in the hands of the distributor?
Well, there are massive lead times in publishing. So for us, we need to make sure that the books are in our distributor's warehouse I like to have them there at least 3 months before a pub date. But that's not the only deadline that we're faced with, or at least imposed deadline, self-imposed maybe to some degree. But part of that is that when a book comes out, when it's announced through our distributor's catalog, it's almost a year in advance. And that's, to gauge, reader interest. bookseller interest, I should say.
And
so
you get pre-orders that way too, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's the point. Is that you can almost somewhat begin to determine what the print run's going to be like based on those pre-orders. But part of that too is that if you want a book to sell well, you've got to do some advanced marketing behind it, and you want to make sure that you get books out to advanced copies to your sales force, to your bookstores, to critics for reviews, periodicals. There's a whole list of different things that you want to because you're building that momentum, right? And then you also give the author and or artist time to begin to self-market it on their end through whatever their social media channels, their friends, their family, bookstores that they have great relationships with, conventions like you guys do, festivals, appear on various different media outlets like this, that sort of thing, right?
So for you,
Yeah, I think it's exactly the same.
yeah.
Yeah, I think it depends on the project, and I think it depends on what your plan is for the release. But
one major difference here is that you don't necessarily know, there's no pre-order step.
well, it depends. I mean, there is that model for indie films where you're crowdfunding and you're basically just pre-selling your DVD. And so you're trying to pre-sell as many DVDs as you can to get your 10 or 20 grand or 50 grand to go shoot your film. So that model exists. I think there's a lot of variance in the film side in how you get something out too. I mean, that short film that we did, I gave Mark an option. I said, we can either put this in festivals for the next year, or I'll get it on a platform in 2 weeks.
Yeah, because it was up on Steam, wasn't it?
It was up on Steam, and we had a relationship with a distributor who could get us up there in a matter of days, basically, as long as it took for me to make the banner art and put the package together was as fast as we could get it up. And and I let him make that decision because do you want to, it was his first sort of film and he wanted people to see it. And so it didn't really, was it going to get into a whole bunch of A-list festivals? Maybe it would have done one or two, maybe, but it probably would have done B's and C's and spent a year on the festival circuit and been shown, I've done that. And you are at small festivals screening for 5 people or 10 people. And if you're lucky, you're in a program of shorts and you're in a theater and it's full. And
so by getting it up on Steam, you can have those same 5 people
in
1,000 cities all watch it at the same time.
And I think it was an interesting experiment in how fast we could turn something around and get it out. And so he opted to get it up right away. So we got it up. It was up in 2 weeks.
So this is you leveraging current technology to do something.
But I mean, I think
I
would say it's exactly the same. I think that if you want to really have that piece of work have an impact, you need to have it finished, and then you need to figure out how you market that and how you get it to the people.
Yep.
And if you're not thinking about that last step, you're doing yourself a disservice, and you're not really honoring all that work that has to go in to get to that point.
Yeah, because nobody knows about it. Like, I mean, most of our roster, most of the people that like the creative talent that we represent is they're new. They're moderately established. They're not famous. They're not famous to such a degree that they become, a self-sustaining industry themselves. Which is, where you just put the author's name on a book and that will sell the book, whether it's good writing or bad writing. So for us, we have to make sure that we're publishing quality work. That's the big thing. Because if we're not, it'll be discovered awfully quick. And then, make sure that it's properly edited, because that's the biggest part of a quality book is. And there I should say there are good editors and there are bad editors. There are well edited books and there are poorly edited books out there.
And editing comes with a certain amount of style too, right? You can tell, like in film, you can tell sometimes who edited a film.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I would always know who the editor is going in, so it's probably coloring my bias a little bit.
Filmmaking is not about the tiny details. It's about the big picture.
Isn't there like the famous story, like Star Wars Episode 1, or the very first Star Wars in the 70s was saved by the editors. Like it was a...
Yeah.
Every film in the history of film
was
has
saved-
been saved
okay.
by the editors.
To some degree, that's true in publishing too. A lot of writers are great creative writers, but editors are able to tighten those bolts and really make a solid book into a great book. And part of that is knowing when to trim a passage to create pace, to eliminate stilted dialogue, or maybe a chapter should start here rather than there, because it creates a completely different scenario for the reader. So I mean, those are the things that you rely on when it comes to the editorial process. I think that's a big thing for us is that we expect all of the books that we publish, all of the authors that we represent, that they will submit wholly and completely to the editorial process.
Right.
I mean,
All we
it's-
can do is submit.
I think what's interesting is even when what Gregory started out saying is that we have the same job title, but maybe we have different jobs. But what you just described was rhythm.
Yes.
Rhythm, yeah.
Yeah, and no matter what, I think editing is about establishing rhythm.
Absolutely. You have to have that rhythm. You have, even like some of the worst readers, people who read junk, know when they're being duped. When they're reading something that's just been over marketed and they've been suckered. The best readers
Emperor's
know
New
for sure.
Clothes kind of moment, right?
Well, exactly. Like you could name a long list of the stuff that's out there, and publishers, especially the larger ones, are notorious for jumping on bandwagons to sell a book based on a previous book that did well. So let's get our own version of that in there, and I think readers are aware of that because they will sell
Remember in the late
copies.
90s when there were so many meteor movies?
Yeah.
There were so many meteors are going to hit the Earth.
Well, I'm
movies.
sure the film industry is notorious for
Yeah.
that too, right?
Oh, everyone just copies everybody.
Right.
I mean, it's
Or
so
are we
it's
all having
terrible.
the same idea at the same time?
I don't think so. I think there is something to be said about ideas floating around in the air and everyone sort of coming to the same conclusion. And we've seen there's examples of that in science.
Sure.
Even people having the same discovery on either end of the planet.
Yeah.
Once the
but-
constituent parts are present on Earth, and we can
Yeah.
all sort of draw some
I think
conclusions.
to a certain extent, we're all pulling from the same zeitgeist, or zeitgeist, however you prefer to pronounce that word. But
Okay, I have a different sort of question for you guys. I'm looking across the table at Mr. Sanders here, and I'm realizing that in the course of our creative pursuits, there's a number of times when I had like very dangerous near-death experiences. One time at Pinawa Dam.
Were they all
comes
with
to
me?
mind, and a number of them were with you. We were trying to get a shot. We were up on, it was like 15 stories, and Mike leans over to me and he says, "I'm going to get the shot. Hold my belt." And I held onto his belt, and I leaned him out over 15 stories, and man, he got the shot. So the other
my
gentleman
belt.
here,
well,
Have you ever had
because
any-
a belt won't break. You hope it doesn't, but it's hopefully made
long
of
as it's
strong
done
leather.
up.
Yeah.
as long as it's done up. So, gentlemen, have there been any near-death experiences in your creative endeavors? Or
A hold my belt experience.
yeah.
For publishing, for my own work personally, sure. I mean, I think anytime you're going to put something out there, and you're not just going to store it in your your night table beside your bed, I think that if you think of like the sort of the C.S. Lewis commentary, which is anytime you put something down, it's beyond brave. I think that there's a lot of truth to that because there's a lot of ego too, whether you want to admit it or not. Putting stuff on the page and expecting somebody to want to read it definitely demands that you have some level of ego. But I think there's also flip side to that, I have a great deal of anxiety over stuff, my own personal work and work that we publish through the press, which is, is anybody actually going to read it? Are they going to like it? Did I totally screw this up? And I definitely struggle with that. So for me, every time I do something, it feels like I'm out on a limb for sure, and that there is a few saw marks at the end of the limb.
Yeah,
right.
I've been to Las Vegas a number of times, but I don't gamble at all. And people always say like, "Oh, you don't gamble?" I'm like, "Yeah, I do. I'm in publishing."
Yeah,
right. It's just
I'm
fine.
in the art world.
It's all on the line. Right?
It's all on the line.
So there was this one time, we were at a convention. We had driven there, and we'd driven with a van packed with. The great thing about driving to conventions versus we fly to, like 20 conventions all over the world, but when we drive, we get to bring everything, right? As many books as we can carry, as many canvases, as many posters. Like we top that van right up as full as we can get. So when we get to the show, it's overkill, which draws a whole whack of, new people versus our standard setup. So we went and we did the show, and it was just me and Greg. We drove out. It was like a 12-hour drive. We drove there. It was the Edmonton Comic-Con. We drove there. We did the show, and the goal, the entire show, was to sell enough stuff that we could clear out the back seat of the van so that somebody could sleep on the way home while the other person drives.
Beautiful.
Right? We were just trying to sell, like, X amount of pounds to, like, get that room.
And we did it.
And we did it.
We did it.
It was a great show. We moved all this big stuff. We had an empty box dance at the end of the show. And Greg had done, like, a good chunk of driving on the way there. So it was my turn to drive back. And we're about 4 hours into the trip. And I'm sitting I'm driving. And behind, like, a mountain of stuff somewhere in the back, there is a Gregory laid out in the back seat sleeping. And the road between Edmonton and Saskatoon, there is nothing. You were in the middle of nowhere with it's actually quite beautiful because there's no lights, so the sky is completely lit up with stars, and you can see the northern
so you're having
lights.
A serene moment.
I'm
Calm,
having a great time.
Peaceful.
Suddenly, Greg jumps up and screams at the top of his lungs. Some kind of form of night terror or something. I don't know what you said.
A completely vivid dream that you had driven onto that you had fallen asleep. I was asleep, dreaming that you had fallen asleep. And so I woke up like terrified that I had to leap forward and grab the wheel.
Luckily, I did not swerve the vehicle, but it was quite the shock, and I damn near swerved.
Okay, so what I'm learning from this is that the commonality between the likelihood that you may die in a creative endeavor, I'm the common element. You're saying we haven't known each other long enough for you to nearly die as a result of your creative passions.
Hey, look out! Stop! Oh, dear. Hit the brake! Hey!
It's part of the fun, right? Like, it's part of the experience. It's part of doing what you do. So.
The anxiety and the stress.
Yeah,
is part of the
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to be able to I think you have to be able to live with it.
You have to be at peace with the suffering.
Yes.
Because I think in this modern age, there's this whole idea like you should try to avoid stress, right? Like stress is somehow bad. That's such bullshit.
I think it's total bullshit.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think there's a healthy way to obviously handle stress, and there's an unhealthy way to handle stress. There's a healthy amount of stress, and there's an unhealthy amount of stress.
And stress is a conditioned emotional response. Yeah. So if you're feeling super stressed out because your job grinds you in the same repetitive motion every day, right?
Yeah.
That's
you're
a
being
different
told,
feeling. Yeah.
avoid stress, take this pill, mostly so that you can keep doing that repetitive job.
Right.
Yeah.
Not because you're trying to avoid stress necessarily. Stress is the way of your metabolism and your brain telling you you need to change some behavior in order to alter course here.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
But when you can't alter course, they often offer medication.
It's so weird that you say that, because this morning, I don't know what I was listening to, but this saying that I keep hearing over and over in the last few years, that the universe is trying to tell you, people like to say that now, the universe is trying to tell you something. I would just take that word universe and replace it with your brain.
Yeah.
Your brain is trying to tell you something.
Right.
I think stress is a very strong indicator that either you have to be it's gearing you up for the energy you need to
Yeah, your brain is
the
a
fire you
recognition
need
machine.
to actually get the job done.
Yeah.
I know
superpower.
personally, I subconsciously prep myself for long. One of the film I did about a year ago, I cut the majority of the film in a 48-hour stretch of editing where I slept for 2-3 hour naps. In the few days leading up to that, I kind of knew that's what I was that's seemed like the best way to get it out.
You mentally prepared
I
yourself.
mentally prepared myself, and I had the energy to push through those 48 hours of editing. If I were to just do that tonight, I would fall asleep at around 11 o'clock.
Yeah, without the preparation.
Without that mental preparation, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, and we have to do that for shows, right? It's 3 days. It's like basically 46 hours of work over 3 days.
We have a show at the end of the month coming up, 4 days, like 12-hour days with a drive in front of it. And it's like if we were
16-hour drive in front of it, and then you work 48 hours.
like physically and mentally. Yeah, you got to get
and
ready
I think
for
your
that.
body listens to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The week before, I try to eat so good and sleep so well and exercise a lot. And
Well, like this morning, I actually ate breakfast and I drank a lot of water because I didn't want to be lethargic and like what on the I've had way too much caffeine this morning. I'll tell you that much. But
well, I do think though that you can, based on the amount of work that you're doing, you can hit a wall.
Oh yeah.
And I think that it will happen. More than once, especially if you're in a career in the arts. But I mean, just based on even what you were saying about prepping before the week is you got a tough week coming up or a tough couple of days. You're like, I'm going to get some extra sleep. I'm going to make sure that my diet is appropriate. Exercise, that sort of thing. I think all that stuff is great, and I think that it helps. But I think sometimes knowing your limitations, because I think that some artists believe that I can just push through it always, and I don't think that that's the case. I think that you have to know your limitations. I think that you have to be able to
forgive your limitations, right?
Yeah, absolutely, and step away from the board a bit and just be like, I remember illustrating. This is going back years ago. I just couldn't get one panel right, and I was struggling with it like crazy. And I must have erased it and redrawn it, 25 times, and it just looked awful. It just wasn't working. So I gave up. And then the next day I came back and first try. I just needed that breather. I needed to reset. And I think that that's important. I think that that's important too. I mean, all-nighters sometimes have to happen.
Yeah.
But I don't always believe that the best work is done. I used to think that, but I don't always believe that the best work is done by just grinding through it.
No, absolutely not.
'Cause
Yeah.
I've
I
been
should
on
say,
set
like,
with
that
you.
example of pushing through was pushing through to get something completed so that I could then look back on it and look at it as a whole.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I felt that if I was just going to, like, eke it out over a couple weeks, I would be better served if I could just do it and then take 2 days off and then look back at it and go, I see what I need to do there.
Right. So write drunk and edit sober. Is what
Right,
you're saying.
drunk and edit sober.
Super Pulp Science does not endorse the behaviors of its guests, even though we endorse our guests pretty regularly. All right, gentlemen. Well, this has been Super Pulp Science, where we talk about how genre gets made. We have had two wonderful guests and one suffering co-host here today. Matt, thank you very much from At Bay
Absolutely,
Press,
thanks.
and Mike from Electric Monk Media. Thank
Yeah,
you so
thank
much
you.
for coming. And Justin, I'll see you next week, whether you like it or not.
Woo.
This is Gregor Komichuk, encouraging all of you to join the fight and make comics.